Venezuela's interim president, Delcy Rodriguez, says that almost every official in La Guaira state, at the epicenter of last week's powerful twin earthquakes, died in the event. Nearly 2,600 people are now known to have been killed across Venezuela, and rescue efforts are ongoing.
A humanitarian catastrophe of unprecedented proportions has struck the northern coast of South America. Following back-to-back twin earthquakes registering violent magnitudes of 7.2 and 7.5, Venezuela has been plunged into a desperate high-stakes race against time. The structural integrity of the nation's northern infrastructure has been completely compromised, creating a multi-layered emergency response crisis that is testing the limits of international disaster logistics. The official death toll has now climbed to nearly 2,600 people killed, with tens of thousands more severely injured, displaced, or missing beneath the heavy rubble of collapsed concrete structures. But the true epicenter of this tragedy lies in La Guaira state. The destruction here is so severe and all-encompassing that the region's localized governance has effectively collapsed, leaving a massive vacuum in leadership right when coordinated emergency action is needed most on the ground. In a striking admission that underscores the sheer scale of the initial impact, Venezuela's interim president, Delcy Rodriguez, confirmed that almost every local official in the state was killed when the violent tremors completely flattened administrative hubs and municipal offices. Faced with mounting public fury, severe structural collapse, and widespread panic, the administration in Caracas has deployed the military to maintain public order. Officials are fiercely defending their emergency response timelines amid sharp international scrutiny and growing questions regarding structural safety compliance. As the critical 72-hour survival window slammed shut, international rescue teams from 27 nations converged on the razed coastal town of Catiya-La Mar. Most operations across the region had already begun making the grim shift from active rescue to recovery, assuming the harsh conditions had made survival impossible. But on day 9, deep within the ruins of a heavily built urban zone, the narrative shifted entirely, shifting the focus of the global press back to active rescue mechanics. Deep beneath the 140 tons of pulverized concrete, twisted rebar, and unstable masonry, in what was once a multi-story underground parking facility, lay 43-year-old Hernan Alberto Gil Flores. A night shift security guard, Gil Flores was inside his heavy steel security cabin when the structures overhead pancaked in rapid succession. The reinforced steel cabin held the primary weight of the initial collapse, creating a fragile pocket of air that saved him from being instantly crushed by the descending floor slabs. For more than 100 grueling hours, a multinational coalition consisting of specialized search and rescue teams from Chile, the United States, Portugal, Mexico, Costa Rica, and El Salvador worked in continuous shifts. They manually tunneled through a highly volatile debris field, knowing that a single false move or an untimely aftershock could collapse the remaining subterranean cavities and end the mission in disaster. The logistics of this underground extraction were incredibly high stakes and physically exhausting. Rescuers had to navigate torrential coastal rain, persistent aftershocks, and the constant threat of a secondary structural failure within the subterranean lower levels. To drill through the final concrete barriers without triggering a deadly shift in the surrounding weight, engineering teams from the Los Angeles County Fire Department and Chilean units built elaborate wooden props to shore up the shifting walls. Once a narrow crevice was established through the dense layers of stone and steel, a telescopic endoscopic camera was carefully suspended into the darkness to monitor his vitals and check his physical positioning. Through a narrow plastic pipe lowered through the same gap, rescuers managed to pass down vital fresh water and liquid supplements, keeping his organs functioning and keeping him stable over the final 3 days of the intensive excavation process. A Chilean firefighter, Maria Paz Campos, maintained continuous audio contact through a microphone, talking him through the pitch darkness as heavy machinery vibrated inches from his pocket of air. Then, after 9 full days of confinement, the structural breakthrough happened. Emerging into the bright daylight covered in heavy dust and wearing a protective oxygen mask, Hernán Il Flores was carefully carried out on a specialized stretcher to a waiting mobile medical unit. Against all statistical odds of wilderness, urban, and subterranean survival, medical personnel confirmed he was alive, coherent, and remarkably stable given the extreme lack of movement and nourishment. His wife, Gusbimar González, who had waited patiently at the dust-choked perimeter for over a week, described the moment as a ray of light in total darkness, thanking international teams for refusing to abandon the site. For the exhausted rescue crews on the ground, this single survival story provided a profound tactical victory, injecting fresh morale into an overwhelming sea of devastation as teams continued to scan neighboring basements. But as the immediate celebration fades, the geopolitical fallout for Venezuela's interim government is just beginning to take shape. The twin disasters have exposed deep structural vulnerabilities across the country, with widespread criticism from independent engineers targeting substandard construction codes, poor enforcement, and a stark shortage of domestic heavy disaster response equipment. While interim President Rodriguez has firmly stated to foreign journalists that there will be no mass graves and that the state mobilized immediately, independent analysts point to a critical logistics crunch facing the country's long-term economic recovery. As sensor data across La Guaira now turn up silent, the operation transitions from a desperate search for life to the monumental task of rebuilding a shattered nation.